Inazuma 11. While for many kids their regular show to follow was Pokemon or perhaps Yu-Gi-Oh!, I got sucked into Inazuma 11. I had always been a fan of people running around, chasing the ball only to kick it away again, and Inazuma 11 is basically the over-the-top anime version of that. I religiously followed the series and remember the entire Football Frontier arc fondly. The Football Frontier arc is the first story in the Inazuma 11 original series, in which underdogs Ramen take on Japan's most prolific youth soccer tournament. I picked Inazuma 11 back up again a few years back, and I'm still watching and rewatching some of the anime and playing the games, which is where the anime actually comes from. I'm currently working my way through the Go anime, but I've seen the entirety of the Frontier, Alias and International stories, as well as the movie The Ogre Attacks, multiple times. So why did Inazuma 11 stand out to me? Well, what you just witnessed is a Hissatsu technique. They're superpowered football techniques and they're awesome. I am to this day fascinated by these Hissatsu techniques, and so I decided I want to share a bit of that through a video. Now then, let's right into this. Alright, let's start by saying I'll focus mainly on the Season 1 techniques. This does not include Go, even though we just saw Butabi Jump, which I do think is an awesome technique though, and this is mainly because I haven't finished watching Go yet, and because I've seen the first season a multitude of times. That and covering 3 full seasons of Hissatsu techniques is a lot. Now, there's 4 kinds of Hissatsu I want to focus on. First, shooting Hissatsu, arguably the most widely known kind. These can be done solo, like Fire Tornado, Yakuretsu Shot, and God Knows, or with up to 3 people, like Inazuma Drop and Death Zone. The shots see a lot of representation in the people's memories of the most memorable Hissatsu techniques. My personal favorite Hissatsu shots are Hellfire, Revolution V, and Emperor Penguin No. 1. Second, catching Hissatsu. It's the polar opposite of shooting Hissatsu because, well, they're keeper techniques. Again, there's versions of catching Hissatsu that can be done with either 2 or 3 players, like Dual Smash and the Infinite Wall. However, multiplayer catching Hissatsu are much less common compared to multiplayer shoots. Notable catching Hissatsu are God Hand, Drill Smasher, and Soul Hand. Some of my favorites are Wormhole, God Hand, and Infinite Wall. The synergy between shooting and catching Hissatsu is shonen through and through. It's like a standoff between 2 great forces and lies at the basis of the appeal of Hissatsu. Then there's 2 more kinds I want to focus on, blocking and dribbling techniques. Carrying a similar synergy to the shooting versus catching situation, the dribble techniques aim to get past the opponent, and the blocking techniques, well, they try to block the wave. Some blocking techniques also have the ability to stop shots, like the wall and the tower. This also goes for some shooting Hissatsu, by the way. Others mainly exist to steal the ball, like Killer Slide and Bunshin Defense. Notable dribbling techniques are Illusion Ball and the Icarus. This shows that dribbling techniques can also be done with multiple players, I believe up to 2, while blocking techniques have been shown to go up to 3 with Perfect Tower, for example. Now there's also Hissatsu tactics, but I feel that they differentiate too much from the aforementioned types of Hissatsu, at least in the first 3 seasons. Notable tactics are the Katanashio counter and Root of Sky. Hissatsu tactics were also introduced from the 3rd game forward, if I remember correctly, so they didn't exist before that, and so they weren't a thing back then. There's one exception in the match against the ninja team. The ninja team uses their formation in order to, conjure up a dust storm. It could be like the first idea of something like a Hissatsu tactic, but it wasn't like a gameplay feature and a big and a big feature of the anime until the third game and the third season. In the second episode of the anime, we get our first look at Hissatsu techniques. After completely outclassing the main team of the series, Raymond Junior High, Royal Academy, the main antagonist team of the first arc, decides to step up their game in order to force a former star player to come out and switch into help. They do so using their strongest Hissatsu shoot, Death Zone.
さあ、後半戦のスタートです。圧倒的な帝国リードの前にどう立ち向かうのか、ライモンイレブン。帝国からのキックオフだ。行くぞ。デスゾーン開始。そして奴を引きずり出す。
They continue to put their strongest techniques to use, only to aggravate the player they're trying to draw out.
続けろ。奴をあぶり出すまで。サイクロン。100連戦。シャッター。
This goes on all until the star player they targeted, Goenji Shiya, gives in and goes to help Raymond out in their time of need.
Naruhodo, 奴が狙いか。行け、デスゾーン。デスゾーン。よし。あ、走った。なぜか高円寺、エンドを全くフォローせず、一人帝国ゴールに上がっていく。何？メガネと同じ敵戦逃亡か？あいつ、俺を信じて走ってるんだ。俺が止めるって。これを止めた俺から必ずパスが来ると信じて。まさか幻のゴッドハンド。止めた。ついに帝国のシュートを止めた。間違いないゴッドハンドだ。40年の時を経て伝説の稲妻イレブンの技が蘇ったのか。これだ。
これはまたなかなかの余興だな。
行けゴエンジ。そしてボールはゴエンジに。
These kinds of moments occur more and more throughout the series as it goes on. Every team has its own kind of technique. For example, Occult has its Ghost Lock, which is a curse that prevents the opposing team from moving, but of course it ends up being a giant scam like a Scooby-Doo villain's plans. Then there's a ninja team with cloning techniques. Their formation is also in the shape of a fan, and as I mentioned before, they seem to have what might be the first example of a Hissatsu tactic. Then there's the main antagonizing teams. For the first arc, there's Royal Academy. Royal Academy already showed Death Zone as a way to show off that they absolutely dominated the football scene for 40 years. Zeus is a team full of supposed gods, and their names reflect it, like how their goalkeeper is called Poseidon and their captain Aphrodite. Divine Stamp and the God Knows are glaringly obvious examples of typical moves they'll use. And even the main team, Raymond Junior High, has a motif for their moves. Some of Raymond's strongest moves during the Frontier tournament have a lightning motif. The Hissatsu lift the team's characters and make them distinctly memorable, which is exactly what big feature special moves are supposed to do in any anime or any piece of media for that matter. Hissatsu can be cool, but they can also be really weird or unique. The extent to which Hissatsu are used is stretched out very far, and they did a darn good job doing it. Let's pick apart a Hissatsu technique to see what makes it tick. I'll take my favorite, Emperor Penguin number 2. So you'd think I'd start by talking about the actual technique, but this Hissatsu technique has quite a bit of build-up, which makes it so good. For starters, there's emotional baggage due to Kido and Haruna's complicated relationship as siblings. Kido has been fighting for them to be finally reunited after being separated due to their parents dying in an airplane crash. Inazuma 11, I remind you. Again, it flexes for a bit in order to show that Royal has a firm grip on the game. Then, the technique flowing from Kido's will to fight for his sister and Royal's drive to win is shown off as Emperor Penguin number 2.
Kido, ピッチに戻った。どうやらプレーには問題ないようだ。ドラゴンクラッシュ。だがこれも跳ね返される。ファイヤートルネード。残念だったな。パワーシールドは連続で出せる。
なるほど、衝撃波でできた壁というわけか。
キド、
この足に誓って必ず勝つ。ゴッドハンドを破るために編み出した必殺技、皇帝ペンギン。
なんだ、見たこともないものすごいシュートがライモンゴールに迫っていく。そうだ、ヒト、ゴッドハンド。遠藤君、帝国学園先生、鉄壁を誇るゴッドハンドを打ち破ったのは帝国の新必殺シュートだ。天才ゲームメーカー機動優とここにあり。ゴ グラウンドで指揮するようにサッカーという楽曲を奏でている。
The music that started playing in its low-key version ramps up, and the camera shows Kido's trademark goggles, essentially linking the technique and everything around it to him. Then we hear a clear whistle, and the penguins come sprouting from the ground. Kinda weird, but super cool as well. The whistle would become a staple of all Emperor Penguin techniques in the series. It's almost like a penguin war cry. Then, when the ball is passed to Royals forwards to complete the technique, the penguins fly from the ground like rockets, which fits their form really well. The forwards finish the technique, and the penguins fly chaotically after the ball, to then finally find centering and go straight for the goal. It breaks through God Hand, as it was made to do that, by applying pressure with the ball and the penguins, showing us some great sound design in the process. The shot finalizes, the music concludes, destruction. So with this technique in particular, we see a 3-step plan being used. 1. Build up. 2. Face off. And 3. Payoff. The build-up generally shows the plays prior to the technique being used, like goalkeeper Genda stopping Raymond's forwards at every turn. For some specific techniques there's also context or history, like player having worked really hard on developing the technique, or in this case, a character using the technique to fight for something or someone. Then there's the face-off, the most Hissatsu part of the technique. Here, the technique is showed off, the penguins called, players involved introduced, and general theme decided. The face-off is the most cinematic and spectacular part of the entire scene. It pits one technique against the other in this case. Will the poster boy God Hand win against Kido and Royal's killer shot? Then there's the payoff, the conclusion. The technique's powers are pitted against each other and one comes out victorious. It pays off in that the build-up and face-off resolve into something truly epic. I find that nearly every technique follows this general formula, so to speak. Even when there's no Hissatsu for a technique to fight against, there's still a player to be passed or a ball to be stolen with it. Inazuma 11 has these killer techniques down in a way like few other series. It's a simple structure used to its fullest extent, and it refrains from overcomplicating things or bombarding the viewer with grander and grander set pieces, and instead chooses to focus on distinct and impactful techniques. Hissatsu are killer techniques done right. Hey, did you like the showreel? There's a lot more to yeah. Hey, did you like the show? My dog's just walking. Hey, did you like the showreel? There's a lot more to be discovered about Inazuma 11 now that Go and Orion exist. Anyways, thanks for watching this video all the way through. Now that you're here, why not post your favorite Hissatsu in the comments? Well, if you have one anyway.